So I'm going to be showing you how to make the elephant head on the 1/2 inch gauge 96 peg loom, but you can do this on the larger one if you'd like, on the 1/2 inch gauge. And as you can see, I've kind of already started, but it's because this video footage is going to be kind of hit into different areas. I had done a previous version of the elephant head and I didn't like the trunk area, and the ears needed a little bit more work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep what I had where you did the drawstring cast on and you increased. Okay, so that's going to stay exactly the same, and where you do the single knit row right after you do your last increase. Now where it's going to change a little bit is when I'm doing my ears. And as you can see, I switched to a fuzzy yarn. Okay, and I also want to show you some tips on how to keep up with your stuff when you're working with a fuzzy yarn. But I wanted to let you know that this video is going to be kind of a hit and miss, because I'm going to be showing you, I'm going to be keeping what I had with the back of the head and the front of the face, but the trunk's going to be worked differently and the ears are going to be worked differently. So you'll see there's different yarn being used in different sections, and I also want to make it easier to see how to work with fuzzy yarn, because a lot of us probably want to work with fuzzy yarn when we're working with making stuffed animals, so that they look more like purchased stuffed animals. They have that fuzzy, furry look. Okay, and I'm going to show you how to do all the tricks that I do on them while using stitch markers and making it easy for yourself. Okay, so we're going to get started. I'm going to be going back to my original video that I started so that we get up to this point. After we get up to this point, I'm going to show you how to do the ears. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, now we're ready to get started on the back of our head. We're going to move from the back of the head to the front of the head. And we're going to be doing a drawstring cast on first. And so you want to have your wedges set to the 24 peg mark, and then you want to go in and start a drawstring cast on. Alright, and I like to hold the yarn a little bit in front of that starting peg and weave that way. I think it works best. Alright, so I'm going to weave my way around. And then I'm going to go in and toss every other loop over, and that'll complete my drawstring cast on. Okay, at this point, now that we finished our drawstring cast on, what we're going to do is we're going to do 3 rows of knit, and then we're going to do a wedge increase on all 4 wedges, and this is going to be a 4-row set that you're going to be completing. Alright, so what you want to do is you just want to go around and you want to just knit for 3 rows. Alright, again, this is a 4-row set that you're going to repeat until you have 48 stitches, and you're going to do 3 rows of knit, and then you're going to do 4 wedge increase in knit. Okay, and so pause the video and get that much done, and then we will move on from there. At this point, we've completed our 3 rows and we're ready to do a 4 wedge increase. So you're going to knit over to your first wedge. Then you're going to do a twin knit, and what you're going to do is try to pull back, and this is hard to see sometimes, your very first notch that's at the top. You're going to pull it back over and hold it, don't release it. Put your working yarn in front of the peg, and then place your stitch you just pulled back, and then get the stitch you just created and move it to the previous peg. Knit the wedge pegs. Then when you get to the next stitch, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to pull back that first notch, place the working yarn in front of the peg, replace the stitch you just pulled, and then the stitch you just made, move to the previous peg. Then toss the bottom loop over. At this point, you're going to take your wedge and you're going to move it down one slot. Then you're going to take those stitches you just created and move them to the empty peg beside the wedge pegs. Okay? And you're going to do the same thing over here, and you have just done a wedge increase. You may want to snug up those last couple of stitches. You're going to do this all the way around. Okay? And this is going to be your fourth row of a 4-row repeat. Okay? So again, you're going to find that first notch, which is the previous stitch. You're going to pull it back. Okay, you're going to pull that back, place the working yarn in front of the peg, replace that stitch, and move that to the previous peg. Knit the wedge pegs, and then you're going to do the same. It's a twin knit if you're curious on the loom. So you pull back that first stitch, and then put the working yarn in front of the peg, replace the stitch you pulled, move the working yarn stitch you just made to the previous peg, and then knit the peg. You're going to move the wedge down one slot. Then you're going to place the stitches you just created onto those empty pegs beside the wedge pegs. Alright, and you'll want to go in and slightly snug up that. You're going to do this all the way around, okay, and then you're going to do 3 rows, wedge increase, 3 rows, wedge increase, until you have a total of 48 pegs. Pause the video and get that much completed. Okay, so we have finished the back of our head and done a single row, and now we're ready to start on our ears. And what you want to do is you're going to want to knit 6 stitches. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you're working with this yarn, you do not want to be working real tight with it, okay? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Alright, now we're going to be starting on the ear, and we're going to be working over a total of 12 pegs for the ear, okay? And we're going to be bringing what I call the original loop back up. And because this is fuzzy yarn, it's going to be harder to see. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a little trick. You're going to take your stitch markers like this, or something similar. You can use safety pins if you'd like, okay? But what you want to do is, just like on the increase, you want to go in and find that previous stitch and send a stitch marker through it, okay? And you want to do that over the next 12 stitches. You want to go in and pre-mark them, alright? And you're finding that previous stitch, which should be easy to feel for. You should be able to see it. But what that'll do is keep you from losing track of where you can add them back on and everything. And I'm going to show you how to make this easier, where you can see every little thing you're doing on this, so that you don't have to sew up the ears, but you can still work with this fuzzy yarn and see what you're doing. Okay, we have now marked our 12 stitches, so make sure, I think I have one more to mark, the very first one. Okay, so you want to make sure you marked out your 12. When you're ready to bring your original loops back on. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Alright, we got our 12. So what we're going to do is we want to knit over 12. And keep in mind you're always going to be slipping the first peg every time you work back and forth between these 12 stitches, okay? And what you're going to end up doing is you're going to end up putting a stitch marker on that end peg where you're doing the slip. Because what you're doing is you're creating a chain. Okay. So I'm going to knit that last peg. I'm going to take and put a stitch marker on it. Alright. I'm going to slip it. Alright. And then I'm going to knit my way back over. And what you're going to do this is you're going to knit between these 12 stitches for a total of 8 rows. Okay. So we've done row 1 and now we're working on row 2. Okay. And here's our last one. Because we're going to be slipping it, we're going to put a stitch marker on it. And this is when we go to work our way back, it'll be easier to see what you're doing. Okay, so you want to continue doing what we were doing, these last 2 rows, where you slip the first stitch, you knit to the end, and then when you go to slip it, you're going to add a stitch marker, okay, because you'll have just created a chain that you're going to want to add back when you go to start working your way back in with the ear, okay. You're just going to continue to do that. Okay, so you're going to knit that peg over and you can just move that stitch marker in the middle. Go ahead and add a stitch marker. Alright, so go ahead and pause the video and get your 8 rows done, and at this point we'll have completed 3 rows. So you want to continue until you got a total of 8 rows, and then we'll come back and we'll start our increasing and be working with that. Okay, we've done our 8 rows, which ends us back over here, and now we want to start increasing. So all you're going to do is you're going to increase by 1 by wrapping and turning that next peg, and then you want to start knitting your way over, and my suggestion at this point would be to actually go in and put a stitch marker on that increase. Okay. And then you want to knit your way over to your other side, and we're not going to be increasing on this other side. Alright. So at this point you're going to knit over to peg 12. Okay. And this side never increases because this is the top of the head. Alright. Knit your way over. And again, we're still slipping because we're going to be adding these chains back, so keep that in mind. And always keep adding your stitch markers. If you're working with stuff you can't see very well, always have your stitch markers. Okay. Now, we're going to slip that first stitch. We're going to work our way back. We're going to increase again on the other side, and I'm going to make a very important note to you when you're increasing for ears like this, when you're doing a short row, Make sure that you do not toss your original stitches over on those increased pegs. It is important. Do not do it. Okay, so we're here. Here's our last, and here's our increase. We only toss the increase stitch over. You see? We don't toss that original. We do not touch it. No touchy. Because if you do that, if you toss those original stitches over on those increased pegs, you're going to connect the tip of your ear to the back of your head. Alright? Don't want to do it. Alright? So do not touch those. Now we're going to wrap and turn on another increase, the next peg. And you're going to start knitting. I would suggest adding a stitch marker again. And we're going to be increasing a total of 6 times. Okay, so this is the second one. So we're going to knit our way over. So you're going to do this a total of 6 times, increasing when you come back over. Okay. Remember, you're only increasing over here. Okay, we toss that bottom loop over. Remember, we'll add a stitch marker to that. Okay. Making sure, and if you want to do this with regular yarn, you can, just to make sure that you can keep up with your chains when you get there. Okay. So I'm going to show you one more increase. I'm going to tell you to pause the video and continue increasing until you have 6 increases, and you'll know we have 2, so we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you're going to be increasing all the way back to your starting point here. Alright, so I'm going to show you one more increase so you have the idea, and then I'm going to tell you to pause the video and keep going until you have your last increase and invert your way back over to here. Okay, and then we're going to go and do the next section of the ear. So I'm going to show you one more increase, and then I'm going to leave you to it. Toss that last increase over. Here's stitch marker. Okay, wrap and turn. Here's your next increase. Remember, don't touch that original stitch on your increase pegs. Okay, then put your stitch marker on the increase. Okay, now pause the video, complete your increases all the way to here, and once you do your last increase and work your way back, then we will start the next section, okay? And go from there, but continue using your stitch markers, and we'll get where we want to be working. We'll be halfway done and we'll be ready to work the other half back. So go ahead and increase your way out, work your way back here, and then we'll go from there. Okay, we have finished over here. We have 6 increases, as you can see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. At this point, we want to do 6 rows back and forth, slipping the first stitch, but we don't have to mark them. Okay, so slip in that first stitch, and you can just knit your way over. And at this point, we're at the tip of the ear. And once you do your 6 rows, we'll be working our way back up the other side. So at this point, you shouldn't need any more stitch markers. Because after these 6 rows, what you'll be doing is you'll be adding them back. Okay. Now remember, on these increase pegs, don't touch those original stitches. Okay, there is row 1, and this will be row 2, and you're going to do this for a total of 6 rows, always slipping that first stitch on the end. Alright, and you don't have to mark the stitches at this point. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video and get your 6 rows done. Then we'll be ready to start adding in these stitch markers that you've been adding on periodically on your slip stitches. You start picking them up and adding them back to the end pegs as you go to finish a row. Okay, and I'll show you how that's done. Alright, so go ahead and pause the video, get your 6 rows done. We'll be ready to work the other half. Okay, so get your 6 rows done, and we'll come back and start working the second half where we start decreasing back down to the original 12 again. Okay, we've done our 6 rows and we're ready to start decreasing. And what that means is you're going to take this end stitch. Now you're working yarns over here, but that's okay. You're going to take that end stitch, you're going to move it over one. I always like to go ahead and prep my decrease. And then you're going to find your end stitch marker, which is right here. And what you're going to do is you're going to place that stitch you saved back onto Loom. Okay, and we're going to be doing this every time we do a decrease. Alright, and the object is to get back down to your original 12 pegs. And I'm going to show you this a couple of times. Alright, so I'm going to slip that first stitch. I'm going to knit my way over. Okay, and then we're going to knit those stitches, 3 stitches together. And remember not to touch the end stitch. Now what you want to do is you want to come over here and you want to find your first stitch marker here, and you want to place it on the end peg. Okay, just like that. You find your first stitch marker, place it on the end peg, and what we're doing is we're reconnecting the other half of the ear so that you have to do absolutely no sew up. It's the object of this. Alright. And now you're going to slip that first stitch and you're going to knit your way over. Make sure that first stitch is kind of loose that you're slipping because you're going to be decreasing it again. Alright, so you're going to knit your way over. And I'll show you the next decrease, but you're going to continue this processing of every time you are knitting to the other side, you're adding a chain, the next chain down, which is your stitch markers. Okay. And again, you can do that process even if you're working with a regular yarn. You can see you don't have to do, you can do it without, you can do it with, but when you're working with yarn like this, it's very hard to see. It's just going to be easier to do it this method. Okay, and you get to the end peg, you are going to knit both stitches together. I'm going to show you one more decrease over here. You're going to decrease over, then you're going to find your next chain, which is this one. You're going to add it onto the peg, and then when you come over here, you're going to knit all 3 together. Now, keep going where you're decreasing until you're back to your original 12 pegs. Alright, and you're going to keep adding a chain over here from these because you're reconnecting. So go ahead and pause the video and get your decreases done to where you have back to your original 12, and then we'll keep going from there and we're almost done with the ear. Okay, we finished up and we've gotten, as you can see, we no longer have our increase sections. We're back down to our 12. And you can see here at the bottom, there's your tip of your ear, there's part of your ear. Alright, now what we want to do is we want to finish our ear up. We want to finish connecting. Okay, well, tip of your ear may be up here. You want to shove it down in the opening you have here so that you can see what you're doing. Now, to make sure that you're getting the right thing, you're going to go and you're going to find the next stitch holder that's right up against your peg here. Okay, so this is the next one. We're going to put it on the peg. Then we're going to slip that first stitch over here and knit our way over. And at this point, what we're doing is we're just adding these stitch holder chains back to the end pegs until we don't have any more we can add. And I think this side has 3, the other side has 4, okay? And then we're going to be adding our original lid back on. So I'm going to take that stitch holder off, and then we are going knit the two together. Here. You're going to come over here and we're going to find the same thing. Okay. That's our next closest one. We're going to add it to our end peg. Alright. And then we're going to knit our way over. And at this point I'm going to tell you to pause the video and finish adding in your chains to the end. Okay, and then we should be ready to add our original loops back. So you come over here and then we're going to knit two together. Alright, I'm going to show you to add the next one, which is here. You'll see it's the next closest one. You can pull it up and add it to the peg. Yes, so you're going to add that one to the peg. And take the stitch holder off and knit over, knit two together. So pause the video, keep going until you have no more stitches you can add. And what you want to make sure you have is 12 stitch holders left when you keep adding. So when you feel like you've added to where you want to check and count your stitch holders, you want to have 12 left. Alright, so pause the video, continue adding, and then we are almost done with this ear and we'll be ready to work the next section. Okay, at this rate I should have 12, and I finished over here. Excuse me. Alright, at this rate I should have 12 stitch markers, and I finished over here, so I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now what we want to do is we want to go in and we want to add these stitch markers to our 12 pegs. Okay. Alright. So this is probably the most stretching you will be doing with this type of yarn. Okay. So you want to go in and add all these stitch holders back to your pegs. And this is bringing the original loops back, as I call it. Alright. Okay, we're gonna put that one on there. And then we want to put this one on here. Alright. Now what we want to do is take all of those stitch markers off. Then we're going to knit the two together all the way over, and that'll complete your ear. Okay. Okay, we've added our two stitches over, and now we want to start with the peg we finished with, and we want to knit the two stitches over. I'm going to knit the two stitches over. We're going to do this over the full 12 pegs, and this will complete our ear. Then we'll need to do the other ear. And our last one completes our ear. Alright, now you pull it out, and there's your ear. See? There's your elephant ear. Alright? And it's all connected, there's no sewing required. Okay, at this point, what you want to do is in between your ears, you're going to knit 12. So you're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. At this point, you're going to do exactly like we did over here. You're going to add stitch markers to all 12 previous stitches, and then we're going to start working up our next set of rows. Okay, I'm now marked off my other ear, my 12 stitches that I'll be pulling back. Alright, and this ear is going to work exactly the same. I'm going to get you started on the increase so you know what you're doing. And the only difference with this ear is you're going to throw it off by 1 row. Now, when we did this ear over here, we did 8 rows to get started. But with this one, we're only going to do 7 rows to get started. And what that'll do is throw it off 1. And then you're going to follow the instructions. When you increase, you're increasing over here. So that when you have your extended end, it's also extended over here in the same direction, okay? You don't want one ear extending one direction, one ear extending it. You want to fit them hanging the same way, okay? So what you want to do is you want to just knit your way over, and you're going to do, instead of 8 rows, you're going to do a total of 7, all right? So this is going to be row 1. And remember, you'll want to mark these slip stitches at the end so that you know you can easily pull them back without having to go hunt for them when you start adding your chains back. Okay. So I'm going to add my stitch holder, pull that in. Alright, and work my way back over here. Now, this ear is not working hardly any differently than the other ear. You're just increasing in the other direction rather than the direction you originally did. But as again, we're throwing this off by 1 so that we end up in the correct direction when we start increasing. Okay, so I'm going to get back here, and then I'm going to tell you to pause the video and complete your 7 rows, not 8, 7 rows on this ear. Okay. And I'm going to toss that one over and add a stitch holder, stitch marker. Okay, so pause the video, get your 7 rows done, and then I'll be ready to show you how to start doing the increase. Okay, we're ready to start our increase. We finished our row 7, which ends us up here. Okay, and you can see that's our starting point there that we originally had. So what we're going to do is we're just going to wrap and turn, and I'm going to knit that first one over. Then I'm going to place a stitch marker on the increase for later, like we did on the other side. Everything's working like we just did on the other side. We're increasing this direction instead of increasing the other one, okay? So once you get that idea that where you're increasing, you're going to increase 6, alright? So you're going to increase just like we did. And increase, and remember, don't knit that original stitch over on your increase pegs. You start attaching it to the bottom half of the head, and then it doesn't sit loosely. Alright, so make sure you don't do that. Okay, and then you're going to move that over and add you a stitch marker over here. Alright. And you're going to turn that over here. Again, we'll show you a couple increases, and then I'm going to leave you to go and take care of it. So slip that first stitch and knit your way over. Then you're going to knit your increase over, and then you're going to increase by wrapping and turning the next available peg, which is right here. Okay, and then I always like to knit over a couple and then go back and place a stitch marker on that as well. Alright, so you're going to do a total of 6 increases, just like we did these last two. Alright, you're going this direction. You're not increasing over here at all. Okay, that's a flat edge that you're creating. So go ahead and pause the video and complete your increases. We'll come back and I'll start showing you how to do the next section. Okay, so your increases will get you to your halfway point on your ear. Let's go ahead and pause the video, get your increases done, continuing just like we did over here. You knit your way back, add a stitch marker, slip the stitch, and then increase, and then knit your way back, constantly adding stitch markers on the end so that when you go to add them back in later, just like we did with the other ear, it's easy to keep up with. Okay, we've increased, as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And remember, you can still see the original stitches sitting down here at the bottom. So we're doing good. Now at this point, we're going to do our 6 row set. So we're going to go in and we're just going to be working back and forth between these 18 stitches for a total of 6 rows. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Alright. We don't have to mark the stitches at this point, just like we did with the other ear. So go ahead and slip your first stitch every time you get started, alright? And you're just going to knit your way over. And you're going to do this a total of 6 rows. This is the most complicated part of this whole pattern, is the head, as it usually is. Alright. And then you get your last increase over, shove down. This is row 1. Slip that first stitch on the increase, knit your way around, and this is row 2. Alright, so go ahead and pause the video and complete your 6 rows, and when we come back, we'll be ready to start decreasing and adding our stitch marker chains back, okay? So go ahead, pause video, complete your 6 rows, and then we'll get ready to start decreasing and working on finish the other half this ear. We're ready to start decreasing. We ended over here. And so what we want to do, I like to do my decreases first so I don't have to worry about it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my last increase over here and I'm going to move it over to the next peg, which is decreasing. And then what I want to do is find my closest stitch marker, which is right here, and I want to add that increased stitch, which, because you were adding them, so you're going to add that, alright, because we're going to start working the decreases down, okay? So I'm still slipping the first stitch over here, but I'll start adding once I come back this direction. So we're going to knit our way around. Okay, and then we're going to knit all 3 stitches together. Okay. Then we're going to go over here. I have to always do this step first. You're going to go in and you're going to find the closest stitch marker to your peg, which is this one. And then you're going to add that stitch to the peg. Okay, and you're going to continue to do this just like we did over here where you decrease, and then add your chain, and then knit your way over, and then knit the 3 together, and then add your chain on the other side, and then knit your way over, and knit the 2 together, just like we did on the other side, okay? So, I'm going to show you one more decrease set up after this, and then I'm going to tell you to pause the video and get your decreases done to where you're back to 12 stitches, okay? That's the goal, is get back to your original 12 stitches. Okay, and then we get over here and we knit the 2 stitches together. Alright, and come back over here, we're going to do another decrease. So we're going to take that end stitch, move it over 1. Then we're going to find our next closest stitch marker, which is this, and then we're going to add it to the peg, which gives us 3 stitches to knit over. So, pause the video, get your decreases done to where you're down back to 12 pegs that you're working between again. There's no more increases. And then we will finish up the ear and be finishing up the first half of the head. Okay, as you can see, we have no more extra stitches sitting over here, and we have our little tail we've created. Now what I like to do is go in and send it through the hole, okay, that you have in here. Alright, at this point we have our little side chains, and what we're going to do is just like we did over here, keep adding until you have 12 stitch markers left. Alright, and when you have 12 stitch markers left, then you're going to add them back and knit the 2 pegs and then the 2 stitches over. So you're going to do, at this point, you're going to do exactly like you did over here, to finish up your ear. So keep adding the chains, you know, add the chain, knit over, add the chain, knit over until you have 12 stitch markers left. Okay, and then you want to add all the stitch markers on and then knit the 2 together. Okay, and then we'll be ready to finish up this row and then start the front of the face. Okay, so pause the video, finish your ear. Alright, and then when we come back, you should be here ready to knit the rest of the way to finish the row. Okay, as you can see, I have finished the ears. Cute, right? It looks exactly the same on top because we've added our original loops back and everything. And at this point, we're going to just finish knitting our way to the starting point. Now at this point, we have been knitting flat. I mean, we have been knitting circularly, and we want to start knitting flat. Okay. And we would like to create a nice chain, but I'm not going to mark them because it's just sewing, okay? And this one is not completely impossible to see, but if it is completely impossible, my suggestion to you is to go in and mark each slip stitch here so that when you go to sew, it's a little easier, okay? But I'm not going to do it with this particular yarn. But if you're, say, using one of the fur yarns, the real faux fur yarns, I would suggest marking every single stitch. You know you're going to have to reuse or put up back up on a loom or whatnot. Okay. At this point, we're going to be creating the face, and we're going to be working flat over all the pegs, and we're going to be slipping the first stitch and working our way back. And we're going to be doing this for 13 rows, and this is the face of the elephant, okay? And then we will work on the trunk. Alright, so you'll knit around back and forth flat for 13 rows, okay? So go ahead and pause the video, complete your 13 rows, and then I'll show you how to do the trunk. Okay, I have finished the face. As you can see, the ears are coming out more and everything like that. Okay, so next what we want to do is we want to go in and start our trunk area. Sorry, constantly moving these projects around gets the yarn tangled more than I like. Okay. Now what we want to do now that we've done our 13 rows is we want to start working our trunk. Okay. So what we want to do is wedge decrease all 4 wedges. And you're going to repeat this down to 24 pegs, what we're going to do on this set. And then we're going to do our next section, which will be a repeat. Okay. But this is the first section of the trunk. There's 2 sections. So move all your wedges down 1. Then take the stitches and decrease those down. So this is a 4 wedge decrease and knit. Alright. Alright. Now we've decreased it. And what you want to do now is you want to knit your way around. Okay? And after you've knitted your way around and you knit both stitches over on your wedge pegs, okay, so go ahead, pause the video, knit your way around, and then we'll come back and I will explain what the next 2 rows are. Okay, at this point you want to do 2 rows of knit. So you want to slip that first stitch like you've been doing, and then you just want to knit your way around for 2 rows. Okay, so 2 rows of knit, and then you decrease again, and then 2 rows of knit, and then you decrease again and 2 rows of knit. Okay, and what that'll do is get you down to 24 pegs. Once we're down to 24 pegs, we're going to do the next section of the trunk. Okay, and this will be the thinner tip of the trunk to finish up it. Okay, so pause the video, get your decreases and 2 knit rows. I think you'll end up doing that like 3 times. And then we will move on and I will do the next section of the trunk, which is where you're just decreasing on the ends to get down to, I think, 8 stitches. Okay, so pause the video, get this section of your trunk done. You want to get down to 24 pegs. You do a wedge decrease row, and then you knit 2 rows. Wedge decrease row, knit 2 rows. Okay, you're going to do that and down to 24 pegs. When we come back, I'll be ready to show you how to get it from 24 to 8 stitches. Okay, we've completed our decrease, and let's see if I can get this in camera. You should start to see the head, and there's the ears, and that kind of thing. Alright, so, what you want to do at this point is you're going to do a 2-row decrease, 2-row set. And you're going to be going from 24 pegs to 8 pegs, and then you're going to do a drawstring bind off like you normally would. Nothing special because it's only 8 stitches. Okay. Alright, so what you want to do for your first row of your 2-row set is you want to move that end stitch over 1 and this end stitch over 1. Okay, and then what you want to do is you want to ear up that and toss both loops over, and then you're going to knit your way around. Okay. And then you're going to decrease on the ends, just the ends just like this, every other row. Okay, so you're going from 24 to 8 stitches is your goal. And every other row is just a regular knit. Alright. Sorry, this is a little easier on your lap, but okay. So you're going to knit your way around. And this isn't too bad for the trunk area. Okay. Okay, we're on our last stitch. We just knitted both those stitches over. And now what we want to do is we want to just start like we have been and knit your way around. Nothing special, no decreasing. Alright, so just slip that first stitch and I'm going to go ahead and knit my way around. Alright. And you want to repeat this 2 set where you decrease on the end and you knit a row until you go from 24 to 8 stitches, okay? So I'm going to tell you to pause the video at this point and decrease your way down to 8 stitches. Alright, go ahead and drawstring bind off your 8 stitches, and then we'll come back and we will go in and sew up your trunk and finish up your head and really make the head pop. And then you'll need to go to part 2, which will be your elephant body. Okay, so pause the video and complete your decrease, and I'll show you how to go in and start decreasing. So as you can see, there's the end stitches over and start again. Alright, pause the video, get your trunk done, and we will move on from there. Okay, now we're to finishing our head off. Okay, and as you see, I've already got it drawstrung off and that kind of thing. And so now we need to close up our trunk area and close up the back of the head and stuff, and add your eyes and that kind of thing. Okay, now because this is delicate yarn, you can either change up or use a regular yarn to sew up this trunk, or you can try to delicately sew up the trunk with this yarn. Okay, it's delicate, which means you're going to try to sew. I always suggest don't try to do too much sewing with this style yarn. Okay, alright, now I have safety eyes here, and I think I'm going to use my new additions. You can get these on eBay, and let me decide what color I want to use. I may use brown. Okay, and they just stick up in there like that. Real nice and neat. Okay. And then you just get 2 washers to add. And those are your safety eyes. Now, again, you can get these eyelids, as I'll call them. You can get them on eBay. I didn't find they were that expensive to buy. They're 15mm eyes. They work good for this size animal and that kind of thing. Okay, so let's get started. I have my scissors, I got my sewing needle. I'm going to try to use this delicate yarn. If it gives me too much trouble, I'm going to switch to my scrap yarn that I have here that's a close color, but I'm wanting to use that mostly for cinching the eyes. Now the needle is what will go in and disintegrate it, actually, more than you might think. Okay, so I'm going to sew up the trunk, and what I want to do is I want to sew it up to the decrease point, which is going to be up in here. Okay, because I see my first decrease shows up in here, so you want to find out where your first decrease is, and you want to do that. Now if you want to try to get it to where you can see where you need to stop, you can take and put a crochet hook through 2 corresponding chains, or you can put a stitch holder. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to try to get to the very edge and just send it through and do this all the way to the end. Now, you aren't going to likely be stuffing the trunk much. at the tip. You'll be stuffing it more at the base. And you're just trying to find your chains that you've created by slipping, and it won't be as consistent as other areas because you decreased on the outer edges, but it'll be close. And you just go in and sew those together, and you might want to give it a little tug if you can, but be very gentle if you're working with this style yarn, okay, because it does tend to disintegrate if you aren't careful. Now I'm going to do a little pull so that when I stuff, the trunk will actually curve down more. That's kind of my goal here. Okay. Working my way towards my spot. Okay, and you'll see I'm getting it to curve a little bit more. And it's up to you how much you want to try to get your trunk to curl. However tight you want to pull it, right, is how it's going to do that. Now you're going to be more gentle when you start doing other areas, but the body's going to be pretty much one piece. Okay, so we're here. Go ahead and pull that out. And what I like to do is pull it halfway through and knot it. And then I shove that knotted area up into the trunk. Okay. Alright, now it's time to close off the back of the head. Okay. And this is where I like to do the star stitch. And I've already pulled the yarn that was sitting out here in here. Okay. And I like to do what is called a star closure so that you don't have a hole back there when you go to actually stuff. I like to pull it as tight as I can, and I like to go straight across. Alright, then I like to go, and it's like drawing a star, but what you're wanting to do is kind of close off the area so you don't see the hole. Go straight across and then go straight across a little off, and then basically try to draw out a star with a needle in your circular area. Alright, and then you'll pull it, and you see this is what happens if you aren't careful with this type of yarn. Alright, I'm going to halfway pull it, and I'm going to tie a knot in it. So it worked. I didn't have to use extra yarn. I could use what I have. I try not to waste yarn as much as possible. And I just add that in as part of the stuffing. Okay. So we have ourselves sewed up. Now, finding where to put the eyes can be a challenge. Alright. Now, we know our decreasing is starting here, and there's a section for our eyes. Now, what you may want to try to do is go ahead and stuff the head and see where you want to place your eyes. And sometimes I've been known to be able to go in and add the washers and stuff when it's kind of stuffed already. So if you want to kind of see what you're dealing with, you can go ahead and stuff your head. And if you're not one who's going to be doing a whole lot of stuffed animals, if you have an old pillow in your house, you can dismantle the old pillow and loosen up the polyfill and just pull it apart like this and just stuff your animals like that if you're not one who tends to make a lot of stuffed animals. But because I do, I tend to go out and buy a polyfill. So I'm just going to stuff it. Because I flatten it, I should be able to stuff it fairly firm, but as you can see, you may not want to stuff your trunk as much. Okay, so I keep stuffing until I'm happy. And you'd be surprised at how much stuffing you use for an animal like this. You'd be very surprised. Okay. Now, what we want to do is we want to try to find a place to add our eyes. So, it's usually around your decrease point lined up with your ear, the top of your ear. So, somewhere in there I think is good. Sometimes it's easier to just go ahead and stuff it. And let me go back a little. Okay. Lined up with where your first decrease is. And then once I get these locked in, I'm going to do a eye cinching technique. Okay. I feel like I've got that generally where I want it. Then I'll go in with my washers and actually set them in. Okay. And that's where you'll probably just move your there's one. You can move that around a little bit. Alright, and then you may want to have to go in and re-look at this. This is all finishing up as kind of its own special skill. Alright. And you want to move all the polyfill out of the way there, so you can add in your washer here. Shove that in. Make sure they're shoved in good. Alright, then you may want to move your stuffing around a little bit again. Alright. And there's a lot of shaping when it comes into stuffed animals. Okay, now we want to do what I call eye cinching. And what this consists of is you thread a needle, you do a slip knot at the end. I'm going to give myself a lot of extra so I can shove it back into the head. Okay, now what I like to do is go as close up under as possible. Alright, under the eye, send the needle through the slip, tighten it. Alright, then I'm going to send it through, and then I like to send it through the back of the head, okay, like that. And if you feel like you need to do the top of the eye as well to get more of a distinction in, you can. But I'm going to go ahead and do the bottom of the other one. And I send the needle through the back of the head. And I try to get as close to the bottom of that eye as possible. Send the needle through. It looks like I may need to do the top of the eye as well. You don't always have to do the top of the eye. Sometimes just doing the bottom of the eye is enough. Okay. But I think I'm going to end up doing the top of the eye. And you just send it back through to the back of the head again. Okay. Now if you want to, you can do the top of the eye just to make sure, but as you can see, you're already getting it to where. Okay, I think I will send it through the top of the eye just to be sure that I got what I want. I may have to do a little bit more stuffing just to make sure that I have what I want. as I said, this isn't always, you always have to do this. It's just if you feel it's necessary, and I feel like it is. Just to make sure that eye really gets set in. Because what you want is, you want the indentation really nice, because the indentation really brings in and shapes the head even more. Right? I find that's the big difference. Alright, and one more. And you'll see that the eye cinching really makes a huge difference as to how your animal looks. It has a more defined look to it. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to go in and finish up our, or we want to close off our area. I like to send it through the bottom here. Okay. And then I'm going to go in and knot it off. Alright. Now this is kind of a tedious process, but it is the entire thing of giving it personality. Okay. And I'm not going to say it's not a practiced skill. Now, you have this little tail sitting here. You go in with a crochet hook, and you just pull that tail into the middle, if I can find it where, of the head, like that. Okay. Now, you can check your head and see if you want to stuff it more. I think I might. I don't think it's stuffed as much as I'd want. Okay, so you go in and you are still shaping like I am. You can do less in the trunk if you'd like. I think it needs a little bit more in the middle. So you've completed your elephant head, and now we'll be moving towards the body. And so that is how you do your elephant head. Alright, and then we'll be making the body. Okay, so the link for the body is going to be in the info box below. So go ahead and go to starting the body, and we will go from there.